always approached it like, of course, to me, like b-boy and b-girling, breaking, whatever you want to call it, is an art form. Like first and foremost, it's a dance, it's an art
Hmm.
form,
Hmm.
but it's one that requires your body. Like,
Yeah.
so the more things your body can do, and the more access you have to whatever type of movement you want to do, the more creative you can be.
Yeah.
So why not approach that side of it in a way that allows you to have the best tool possible to
Hmm.
create your art, is kind of
Hmm.
my view on that.
All right, we're here with Nick Robinson, aka the Alchemist, aka Breaker Nick, aka I don't know if you have any other names.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, but these days you're just Nick Robinson, the personal trainer, the Olympic athlete trainer, the now lead, what was it, strength and conditioning trainer for Breaking Canada.
Yes, sir.
Congrats on that.
Thanks, man. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so really excited to have you here. I think you'll have a lot of really useful things for people to learn about with regards to just training and just like the Olympics in general, with breaking being added to the Olympics recently, and everyone looking forward to the 2024 Olympics and stuff. So yeah, really happy to have you and excited to have you share your knowledge and experience in that area, especially because you're a
Um,
trainer who also breaks and who knows about breaking. Yeah, it's very rare, I
no,
think.
yeah, maybe relatively rare. I'm excited to chat to you too, man. Like we haven't connected in a
Yeah,
while, so
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna ask you some tough questions.
Yeah, please. So, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, do you mind just giving a little background information?
Yeah, so my name is Nick, as you have been told. I originally am from Whitehorse, Yukon. I was actually born in Papua New Guinea, but I grew up in Whitehorse, Yukon, which is in the north of Canada. If you're not familiar with geography, it's like the northwest of Canada, kind of like bordering the top of BC and the coast of Alaska. So grew up there. I'm from a crew up there called Groundwork Sessions, or GWS crew. And yeah, we grew up there b-boying. We had teachers from all over the place, predominantly Toronto originally, a crew called ABS crew would come up there and coach us up as young guns. And yeah, from there, I ended up moving to Toronto to pursue b-boying while also going to school. I went to U of T for physical and health education, kinesiology,
Jim,
and
right?
lived real. Sorry, but yeah, gym, muscles,
Yeah.
and Dean likes to do. You like to do bicep curls, no?
Oh yeah. No, I don't do
You're a
any.
bicep curl guy.
I don't do any training. I may
Oh,
sit
the
on the
audio
couch,
is
guy.
totally chopping. I think I've seen you do a bicep curl like once.
Maybe
So
could be.
that's, but not that b-boys need to do bicep curls though. That's the joke there.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, that is me.
Cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like I talked a bit to I had Riley on, and we got into a little bit about just Whitehorse and that experience. But I always think it's such a crazy thing that you guys, what was happening in Whitehorse. Like for people who don't know at all, like Whitehorse again is like up north in Canada. It's like a small. I guess it's kind of a city. It's big enough to be a city, right?
We
Is it?
call it a city. Yeah. So people who visit might say it's a town. I don't know.
Yeah, like it's a really small city, if anything. Like,
Mhm.
and there was basically one what studio? Was it Leaping
Yeah,
Feats?
there's a studio called Leaving Feet. There's actually two dance studios,
Ah,
but only one of which had like, you know, b-boy and b-girling
Right,
and
right.
whatnot. Yeah,
Yeah.
which was Leaping
So
Feet's studio.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just crazy like what happened up there. Like they brought up all these people at first like from Toronto, and you had like a you guys got like gymnastics training in the beginning too, right?
Yeah, we were lucky to have Roche from ABS crew, and he had been on Team Canada actually for gymnastics growing up,
Crazy.
and then transferred into b-boying. And so we had him, we had Mariano,
Hmm.
so like ABS, Begatrix, and then Troy or Whiplash, who was
Right.
ABS crew, but also had been like Super Nats and all that.
Yeah.
So we kind of had a lucky mixture off the bat, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, and like you guys over the years, like your what do you call them? Teachers, mentors are like so many different people and so many different like high level people. It's crazy that that all happened in this like tiny city in northern Canada.
Yeah, we kind of joked that it became this like little like chamber, like a little like training, like what's it called from Dragon Ball Z? I don't really know
Oh,
it all, but like
the
hyperbolic,
hyperbolic chamber. Yeah.
right? So because yeah, you just had this bubble where like it was just popping off, and like
Yeah.
we would I think we were lucky too in that like we didn't have that many distractions. Like
Mhm.
we were in high school and like you're doing high school things
Mhm.
and playing some other sports and stuff like that. But for the most part, like we were training, like we were just
Mhm.
like getting it in. So that was part of it too.
Yeah. I think that's something too that like it's come up a lot with just really like good dancers or crazy thinkers or whatever, and just it's you see it a lot too with like say the NHL. Like a lot of people come from like small towns and stuff like that,
Hmm.
or probably basketball too. Like that, what you just said was like there's very few distractions. Like I think that's a big thing with like being in a small town or being kind of isolated or whatever. It's like you don't have all these crazy places to go and waste your time, or like it's
Yeah.
just yeah.
A- And the funny thing about that is like there actually is like we spent a ton of time like fishing, like us growing up
Yeah,
fishing,
yeah.
snowboarding, all that, of course, right?
Hmm.
So there's that to do. So I guess it's not that there's nothing to do, but it is like the things you're doing don't take your time away or don't distract. Yeah, like I don't know. We didn't spend that much time going to like movie theaters or like there's no like you didn't go to the mall and hang out. Like that
Yeah,
wasn't
exactly,
like
right.
you wouldn't spend a Saturday doing that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and maybe it's part of the other side of things where like there is a lot to do that's active and like, growing
Right.
up, um, there's a lot of research that suggests like being widespread and dynamic in like the stuff that you try
Hmm.
and trying a lot of variety growing up actually helps produce like better athletes or dancers in this case, whatever, in the long run.
Hmm.
So that maybe could play into the fact that like, you say, okay, so there's a lot of like NHL players from small towns. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, they had like access to lakes and stuff like that, but these guys would have grown up skiing and snowboarding and like doing
Hmm.
other sports and moving, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. um Anyway, I always thought that was
Yeah.
interesting that there's a lot of people that come from like these smaller towns and stuff that are really they just have like crazy work ethic and dedication to what they do, which is really cool.
Hmm.
um but yeah, like Cypher for Change and Whitehorse was always like a big, not always, like there was a few years, at least in my experience, where it was like this strange hub for all of Canada. Every year it was like everyone would go up there, and like that's where we got some of the first sort of interactions like between all of Canada, like east to west, like Halifax to Vancouver.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a few years where Cypher for Change, it started with the first jam that you guys came up to.
Hmm.
We threw was Klondike Heat.
Hmm.
And that kind of covered, yeah, most of Canada, I think.
Yeah.
And then the next year, the structure changed and we got different funding and it became Cypher for Change. But yeah, that was a really cool period of time. It's still Cypher for Change is still happening.
Yeah.
Riley threw it like this year again, him and my brother Alex and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
hopefully post pandemic, hopefully it can grow again into like a big,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
But it's cool to see like what they've still been doing. Like I see Riley and what is the MC's name? I forget his name.
Calvin.
Kelvin, yeah. And
Yeah.
like just the cool stuff that they've got going, like it's just people like sessioning and there's like a live drummer and live music and like it just you wouldn't
Oh,
expect that from this small town in like northern Canada. It's just it's so cool. I always really love that about Whitehorse and what you guys are doing there.
it's definitely a vibe.
Yeah,
That's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I want to talk kind of move into your time with like you at U of T and just getting into kinesiology and that kind of thing and like yeah, well, like what was it? I mean, I'm pretty sure I can guess why you got into it, but yeah, what was it that made you want to go with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was like you would probably guess. I guess the root motivation was that I really like found the human body interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that definitely came from a position of like always playing sports growing up. I played a
Mm-hmm.
lot of soccer and did a lot of like snowboarding and stuff, and then obviously got like heavy into b-boying and training. Um, and actually, when I finished high school, my mom made me take a year off. She's like, the rule is you take a year off before you go to do your year of university.
Huh.
So that was her. And at that time, I had no idea what I was going to do. I would have applied to engineering, probably just been like, yeah, I'll just like whatever. So that year off was actually great. Like I took a couple different high school courses. I took like a biology course that I had that was like a human body, basically a bio course.
Hmm.
I took a couple other courses that ended up being prereqs to the kinesiology program at U
Huh.
of T, by mistake, essentially. And I was like, man, I really like that, like kind of like human bio course. I really like enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was talking to someone, and yeah, it just was like, well, maybe look at kinesiology. And I was like, what? I was like, what the hell is kinesiology? And so yeah, I did that, and that's kind of how I got into it. I mean, like I was taking b-boying really seriously. So like honestly, if there had been like, you know how York has a dance program,
Okay.
if there had been like a big b-boying component, like actually there is more so now that Mary is running up there, but Mary Fogarty. But
Oh,
anyways,
okay. Yeah.
I might have even gone that route, but this made sense. I really liked sciences. It was science based, of course, like whatever. And yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up applying to it. And I chose
Nice.
Toronto. I chose U of T because I wanted to come to Toronto because like the guys like that I mentioned before, like Roche, Mariano, Troy, they're all here.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, hey, come down here. You can train at the same time. We could do gigs, whatever,
Yeah.
and you can go to school. I was like, that sounds pretty
Nice.
sick.
Yeah. And you've gone like pretty far in with your studies, right? Like did you get a PhD in this thing?
I did not. I
Okay.
I considered it for like a hot second, and then
Uh,
I backed out. But I did go back
uh-huh.
after we lived in Vancouver and we spent time out there.
Yeah.
Came back out to Toronto and ended up going back for a master's. Yeah.
Crazy.
So I did a like a research based muscle physiology master's in like the exercise science department at U of T.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and it was a process. Like I was running my business full time, my training business simultaneously. So that was a bit of a grind for 2 and a
Is
bit years.
is that one like just you? Like or like your own business?
Yeah, yeah. My training business is just myself. So I haven't worked
Right.
for anyone since I lived in Vancouver.
Wow. Was there any
So that
reason
was
for
just
that?
kind
Like
of,
you just wanted to do it, wanted to try it out?
yeah, I think I just wanted to try it out. I loved where I worked in Vancouver. I worked at Steve Nash Sports Club there, and I loved my coworkers. I loved my boss. Like it was dope. There was nothing like that. But I just thought, you know what? Like,
Give it a
if I could
shot.
do this on my own, I might as well. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that's what I did. I mean, and then with my clients, it was kind of like, oh, this is nice. I have the freedom to you know build a contract or not build a contract. I have the freedom to make the rules. Like these are the ground rules. This is how I run my business. So I kind of like that, and just kind of went from there. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and like you've done really well, and I've been seeing just some of the random things that you post and share, and it's cool. Like you've got some pretty I don't know what to call it, like high profile clients, but like real like Olympic athletes is what I'm trying to get at. Is
Mm-hmm.
you're training like really high level people, and I was wondering, yeah, if you could maybe talk a little bit about just that experience of what it's like to help train an Olympic athlete, and like their mindset, your
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah, no, it's a really cool experience. I've been working with Paul Poirier and Piper Gillis for the last we've just realized it's been 5 years.
Damn.
So Paul actually was a member of Team Canada at the Vancouver Olympics. I think he was the youngest member on Team Canada at the time. They're ice dancers.
Mm-hmm.
And then him and Piper partnered up later on. They went to the Pyeongchang Olympics together,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gunning for Beijing, obviously, next year. But anyways, yeah, no, working with them is a super cool experience. I mean, you have to you really realize that your job is like it's secondary. You're there to support the
Mm-hmm.
athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not you know, their goals in the gym don't really matter unless they translate into their case onto the ice.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of realize that quickly. Like these guys are professionals. These guys come in with a crazy work ethic. There's not really that many days where you have to, I guess motivate would be the term. They come in ready to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, no, but at the same time, like it's really fun because they're like through and through athletes, and they understand movement on a whole nother level. So
Mm-hmm.
you can like you can like work with new movements, for instance, and have them look at it and like they get it,
Right. Right.
uh, and you just see the difference between like even someone who's a casual athlete and that you're like,
Mm-hmm.
it's very noticeable. But anyways, they're a pleasure to work with, and getting to work at that level is really rewarding. I'd say like, the appreciation, athletes always appreciate your work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's a cool experience for sure.
Yeah. Like sometimes I think just maybe it's the weird place that like dance in general is in, where it's like it's this athletic thing, but it's also super artistic and creative, and like I feel like sometimes maybe I'll just speak from like a breaking perspective, that a lot of times like people don't take that side of things seriously, like the athletic side or the training side, or treating it more like a sport. Not to say that it's a sport, but it definitely
Hmm.
has, elements of sport and athleticism in it, right? And so taking that stuff seriously is like, yeah, people don't always do that.
Totally. Yeah, dude. I for sure. I think there's a couple of reasons. I mean, uh, I've always approached it like, of course, to me, like b-boy and b-girling, breaking, whatever we want to call it, is an art form. Like first and foremost, it's a dance. It's an art
Hmm.
form,
Hmm.
but it's one that requires your body. Like,
Yeah.
so the more things your body can do, and the more access you have to whatever type of movement you want to do, the more creative you can be.
Yeah.
So why not approach that side of it in a way that allows you to have the best tool possible to
Hmm.
create your art? Is kind of
Hmm.
my view on that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like that's something that um just in more recent years, and especially as I'm getting older and stuff, and it's like you can't just like, I don't know if you did this when you were younger. You just like go to practice and like just
You
start
just
doing
throw
stuff.
down.
Well, like Mark would do that all the time. You see him at practice, he just starts like tossing his body around, and like you can do that for a while, but especially when you get older, it's like you heal slower, it's wear and tear and stuff like that, and you know you got to start, if you hadn't already, you got to start paying attention to that kind of stuff if you want to keep
Totally.
going. Yeah.
Totally. And yeah, exactly. There's Mark like, oh, my knee. Like,
Have you thought about this? Have you thought about like
Yeah, yeah.
training, conditioning, muscle stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you can look at strength conditioning from like various perspectives because it also provides, injury prevention at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has a performance side to it where, you can, whatever, maybe you have more pop in your push, maybe you have more rotational power, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we want your joints to be more stable. We want your
Mm-hmm.
shoulders to be more robust and more stable in different range of motion, all that stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
both sides of it. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call, of course, I would call breaking a sport, but I do think, you need your body to do it. So why not
Yeah.
condition it in that way?
Yeah. The best way I've heard it put is like it's not a sport, but it has elements of sport or elements
Yeah,
of that. You know, it's like
totally.
things don't always fit perfectly into categories, and dance is like a great example of that, where it's sort of in both realms, right? But one thing
Hmm.
that I want to kind of touch on too is that you just mentioned earlier was yeah, just like it's not just about the performance and like you can you know do this physical thing, or you can spin faster, you can contort into this thing, or I don't know, whatever, but like it's about giving your body more freedom of expression through the strength, through the mobility, through the stability. You can do more things, thus unlocking more like pathways for you to create, right? So it's like there is
Totally.
that artistic benefit to like all this strength and conditioning too.
Yeah, yeah, because exactly like you might be like, oh, it would be really ill if I could like go from here to here to here, but like if your shoulder can't hold it up, then you're not
Yeah,
going to do it.
yeah,
You might say to your buddy who can do it, hey, yo, why don't you try this? but
yeah,
but like, yeah, to me, the illest dancers are of course like the ones with like, like style and you're actually dancing and you're zoning and you're in the music. And yeah, like
mm-hmm.
to me, like if to me personally, if you don't have that, then you're not
Yeah,
like you don't got it. No,
yeah,
but like if you stack the rest of the stuff on top, now you got someone who can zone on that and just like huck a one arm air flare from
yeah,
here
yeah.
too. Like, why not?
Well,
So, anyways.
it's the same thing with like if you're looking at say sport, you have the trainer who's doing like yeah strength and conditioning, mobility, whatever that kind of stuff. But you also have like a coach
Mm,
who's helping them with like I don't know, as an example, like I was reading this thing about like Michael Phelps and his coach,
hmm.
and like they would rewatch the tapes and like basically like memorize everything, and he knew exactly like how many strokes he or whatever you want to call strokes, yeah,
Hmm.
he it took for this size pool. And like there's a story of one competition where his like goggles started to take on water for some reason, so he had to do the race like either blind or partially blind. And
And it didn't matter because he
but it didn't
knew.
matter because yeah, exactly, he had that kind of like habit that was drilled into him of like he could visualize the entire race in his like without a pool. And so like
Probably
that
while
kind of
he's eating breakfast.
exactly right. And so like that's the other side of it too, is like this whole mental side of things, and or dealing with the pressure. Like I was just watching this thing on uh what's her name, the tennis player Naomi Osaka.
Yeah.
There's like some documentary on her, and
Yeah, I want
just
to watch
talking,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and it was just going a little bit into like she lost some competition, and then her giving her thoughts on it. And she was like, I was couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus, and I was like too worried about this other thing or something like that. And it's like there's a lot, especially at those high levels, like yeah, you need that physical aspect of it, but you also need the like mental strength to deal with that pressure of like you know
Totally. Well,
being in those situations, right?
there's even the parallel you could draw that kind of like brings the creativity in where okay you have like say a strength coach or something like that for a soccer player who like makes sure that the player is powerful and
Mm-hmm.
explosive and injury prevention and all that. And then you have like you said the coach who like will work on like whatever, but they work on plays. And then there's the creative aspect that the player has where if you watch a game and like maybe an announcer's like, oh, like like brilliant, like how did he think of that, you know what I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
he'll pull some play out or he'll see some creative way to get through a situation.
Yeah, yeah,
And like that's creativity, and he's able to do it because he or she, they're able to do it because their body has the strength to do that, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
or
Like,
basketball is a huge one. Like you see dudes who are like so, and girls who are so creative, right? Like,
mhm,
and they're doing stuff. It's like art in a sense. They're seeing
yeah.
pathways that other people aren't seeing.
There was one thing with I think it was like Vince Carter talking about this one specific play where it was like this crazy alley oop, and it's it's not just basketball and it's not just sports, and you see it a lot in particular with dance because, and especially breaking, because it's so like in the moment. You don't know what
Mm,
song is going to happen, you don't know what the other person's going to do and that kind of thing, and like in a lot of ways it's all about finding that, like, you know people have different words for it, being in the zone, in the pocket, in like flowing or whatever, that kind of thing. But it's that kind of thing where all of your training and practices come to this one moment where it's just automatic and all of it just like pops into your head. This is the moment where I have to do this. Oh, the ball's
yeah,
coming up here, like I've done this a million times, like, and you don't have to say anything. It's like a cipher,
it just happens, and that's
a
I'm
good
sure for
cipher, I
you
mean.
that's happened b-boying, right? Like where you're just
Yeah,
like all
yeah.
of a sudden you're like, well, remember we call it going to Pluto, but like you know, you're like you're orbiting, right? And it's just like coming out of you.
Yeah, yeah,
And like
yeah,
you're in flow, that like flow state, you know.
yeah.
So
But I really
yeah,
think that that doesn't happen unless you have like strong, this is like what I've, and maybe you have some insight on this, of like the more, the better you know your, like, say fundamentals, and the deeper you know your fundamentals, the easier it is to just kind of like build off of those and create off of that. And like, your mind will just start to see like, okay, I have this position or this move, and like something will just kind of like trigger, and it's like, oh yeah, what if I went that way, what if I went this way, and you start
tweak
to
it this
see
way.
like a billion different ways of doing it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And like if where my interest comes in is that if your body can't uphold those ideas and you can't do them, then
yeah,
you can't bring them to fruition.
yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think maybe a lot of people have that those thoughts where like, oh yeah, what if I did this, what if I did this, but then when they go to try it, their body is not ready to do it,
Hmm.
or it just
Yeah.
physically can't do it. You're not flexible enough, you're not strong enough, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
then the next day you're limping around. The next day you didn't get the move and you're limping around.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Insult to injury.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So
uh,
that's kind of my view on that too. I think we align there.
yeah, but yeah, I think like it's something that especially now a lot of dancers are hopefully starting to think about, is the training, in that sense, training to be able to not only just do more things, do things faster, do things like whatever, but also to help your creativity, to help your
Hmm.
uh, your just general ability in dance, and not just the purely physical side. Yeah,
Yeah. No, 100%. And that is actually where it comes in, that like the training has to be specific to the art or the sport, whatever we want to call it, the dance. It has to be
yeah, yeah,
specific to it,
yeah.
but it also has to be specific to the individual. So like,
Hmm.
of course, we don't want to like if someone's breaking, like we don't want to add a ton of weight to their legs, for instance. We want to build strong, robust legs that still have a lot of movement and aren't heavy,
Hmm.
things like that. So like that's where like the specificity starts to come in for that particular discipline.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
Um,
think that's,
and
yeah,
varies between people too.
yeah, but like that's why I think it's cool to have you as like one of the main people involved in, I guess, like Canadian Olympic breaking, as on the training side, because you have that high level of knowledge about kinesiology and the body and movement and stuff like that, but you also have the actual real experience of like actually doing the dance, knowing
Mhm.
what is necessary for this dance to or to excel at the dance or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited to start like combining it. And I have been like ever since I started training. Um, I have always been working with dancers. It was just a natural progression
Hmm.
because my friends were dancers and my network was dancers, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So I kind of have steadily been and kind of dancers of all different disciplines, like
Hmm.
some ballet dancers, some contemporary,
Hmm.
stuff like that. And over the years, I've just like gotten like increasingly like promising or like interesting results. Um, to the point where there's a contemporary dancer here in Toronto, Lauren Cook. I don't know if you know Lauren, but she is in a dance group called Alias, and then
Hmm.
she also teaches at Ryerson.
Okay.
But yeah, so anyways, like we were getting these results where like her strength was through the roof, and like Alias does a lot of partner work,
Hmm.
and she would be teaching a workshop, and everyone's like, what the hell are you like? How are you doing that, right?
Right, right.
And I'm watching her at the workshop, being like she's working at like 50%, man. Like I like she's not even like sweating here, like but
Yeah.
it's cool because she really like dove in and like really gave me the time. Like we worked a lot together to the
Hmm.
point where it's like, all right, like this is working,
Hmm.
anyways, and I've been working with like b-boys and b-girls throughout as well, so it kind of just like kind of built and built, and I hope to like draw on all that
Hmm.
and like really dive into it further this time and like really like
Yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah. Do you mind? I don't know how much you can say or whatever, but like your role in this Breaking Canada kind of training and conditioning coach. Yeah, like what does that entail? Like what is sort of your role there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously like Breaking Canada is just it's new, and they're figuring out how it's going to function, and I'm sure how it will react or sorry interact or be a part of, say, like Team Canada. I'm not sure, like they're working on all that still and how that's going to
Hmm.
work,
Hmm.
but my role either way would be that once the athletes are identified, or sorry, use the word athletes there, but dancers, artists, whatever,
It's
once
fine.
they're identified, I just keep thinking of it because I'm thinking of the performance side, right?
Right, right.
um, Once they're identified, then yeah, my role just becomes to literally like support them from a strength conditioning point of view in
Hmm.
growing throughout those 3 years.
Right.
So leading up to Paris, right? So, you know, I don't know, for instance, like how they're deciding for sure who the athletes are going to be or
Right.
dancers. I don't know how far out they're going to determine like who's actually going, all these things. But
Yeah, yeah.
the idea is that I'll end up with, a group that we say, okay, like this is kind of the group. Let's start supporting these guys, these guys and girls, and yeah, building them towards Paris 2024.
Cool.
And from a strength conditioning perspective, like you kind of break things down into quads. So you actually want to try to program to have those dancers peak in 2024 during the Olympics. So you actually look
Right,
at like
right.
where someone you want them to be, and you try to dial all the way back, say 3 years in this case.
Crazy.
Um, so that's what you would do if you had for sure, like, okay, here's your five b-boys, here's your five b-girls,
Hmm.
and you're going to work with this team for the next 3 years. But
Hmm.
because it's just new and we're not exactly sure, I can't do that quite yet. But anyways, we're getting started. There's a few dancers who I think they've identified that I'll start working with a little bit.
Hmm.
And yeah, we're hoping to start doing some strength conditioning work in September, I believe. So I'm just kind of,
Cool.
yeah, holding off on that a little bit and planning
Yeah.
it out. Um, it's obviously going to be spread across the country, and that you're going to have dancers from different areas, most likely.
Hmm.
So, just figuring out how that would work logistically.
Hmm.
Um, Luckily, obviously, everyone is like quite good with like virtual stuff now due to the
Yeah.
unfortunate pandemic.
Yeah.
But,
Pros and
because of
cons, right?
that, yeah, I mean, I've gotten quite proficient with like virtual training now. So I think we'll be able to make that work, even though like Canada's a large country and you're going to have people spread around.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's literally it. My job is just provide support,
Mm-hmm.
do as much planning as I can around it with the moving pieces that I know,
Mm-hmm.
and just, yeah, go with the flow and make it happen. Really.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then from there, I'm kind of curious, like, and you don't have to go into super detail about exactly what you're going to do, but when it comes to training and breaking specifically, what are some of the kinds of like exercises, activities, things that people should think about or that you might do with the dancers?
Hmm. Yeah, that, I mean, the easiest way to look at that, and just from like a overview perspective,
Yeah, like
is
imagine like I
just,
don't know anything, which is kind of true. I don't really
yeah,
know anything about training. So talk to me like I'm like 5 years old.
like,
Well, maybe not
you know
5 years
how,
old, but
well, Dean. um no, like I mean, okay, at the end of the day, you want the basics are that you want to make sure that someone has clean movement patterns,
hmm
and you want to make sure obviously that someone has like strong and robust movement and strong joints and all that, and the muscles surrounding the joints to support them. So those are kind of like your basics, and from there you want to start making sure that people are powerful in certain movements or
hmm
explosive in other ones they need to be, depending on what it is. So you kind of can look from a very basic perspective of your primary movements, like, for instance, a squat pattern, like a hinge pattern, a push pattern, and a pull pattern,
What is a hinge
and you
pattern?
break. So a hinge pattern is literally like if you were to imagine, like a deadlift pattern, for instance.
Okay, okay.
So these are all like, that's
Oh
a
yeah, okay, I
very
got you. I
basic
got you.
strength conditioning. Like, that's not specific to breaking at all.
hmm
But even though that's not specific to breaking, like if you had someone and you were working with them fresh, you would start out with these patterns and take a look at these because they were like primary human movements.
hmm
Yeah, and build a base that way, and then start looking at that individual dancer and looking at, you know, what areas nag them, like maybe
hmm
even as specific as what moves do they do that require what of their right shoulder. You
hmm
know, how can we make that more stable? What moves do they do where they need to have an
Right.
explosive pop? But, you know, like, you can get
hmm
specific with it in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, like, minding their mobility and not stiffening them up through training.
Right. Right.
um but I would say it's not your classic, like, you're not going to be doing a lot of like bicep curls and tricep kickbacks. It's not that kind of work.
Yeah.
um but yeah, and then the side of it where you work on like fatigue resistance, and the fact
hmm
that breaking is an anaerobic dance, right? And
Right. Yeah.
so
That's one thing I
working
wanted
on,
to ask about
mhm.
is like
Work,
yeah, like because it's like bursts of energy and it's very like explosive and it's not sort of like one of those like marathon running where it's like long distance kind of maintaining
mhm.
something whatever. So is there anything that you would do with regards to that specifically?
Yeah, I mean, what we've used with a lot of different dancers, and especially with b-boying and b-girling, is looking at, it's an anaerobic sport, meaning that, like you said, it's bursts. You have an intense burst, say 30 seconds for a round ish, and then a quick recovery. And you want to assume, let's just assume they're going to be in a one-on-one, because if you're fit for a one-on-one, then you're going to be fit for a two-on-two for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So looking at it from that perspective, and working on their ability, it's actually their ability to work at a higher capacity before they produce lactic acid, and then increase. Sorry, my video flicked there. I got
It's
to
okay.
plug my phone in a bit. Working at a higher capacity before they start to produce lactic acid, then getting better at buffering that lactic acid they're producing during their round,
hmm
and then getting better at getting rid of it really quick to get them back to baseline before they do their next round.
hmm
So you do that by stressing the energy system that you would use, but I like to use a lot of things that aren't actually the dance for that, because I find that, like, it's a lot of wear and tear on the joints and the knees or something to tell someone like, Oh, plus on top of all your normal training and all this stuff, I also want you like 4 times a week to do 10 rounds back to back.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of wear and tear, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I like to use modalities that get at the energy system in a similar way, but don't have the
Hmm.
same stress on the joints. So like
Hmm.
even simple things like simple like hill sprints, treadmill sprints, different
Hmm.
plyometric conditioning,
Hmm.
battle ropes you see like MMA guys using.
Right. Right.
That type of stuff that we can stress the energy system that we need to
Hmm.
and get the result we want without bothering the body, essentially. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because breaking is very very heavy on that joint stress and
Yeah.
just it's
It's
hard on the
where
body, right?
it's wear and tear on the joints, man, like wrists and shoulders and knees and ankles, like it is. Like
Hmm.
the body can take a beating, like it really can.
Hmm.
But yeah, you gotta look after it. And I do find like, is a culture of like overtraining in in
In breaking,
breaking.
huh?
There's this culture of like overtraining. More is always better. More is always better. Hey, and I'm not one to be like, hey, like let's be soft. I'm not saying that. Like, let's go. But sometimes more is not better, and I find that like a lot of times the injuries come from like overtraining.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Um, can you go into a little more about that, like in a very general sense, like yeah, what's sort of like a decent sort of like schedule or something like that that
Mm,
people might be able to kind of build around or something like that. I guess it would depend on the
yeah.
person too, right?
Depends on the person. Depends on how they recover. Depends on their age.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but depends on like of course, like your nutrition and all that plays in.
Yeah.
But rule of thumb, you want, say in a 7-day week, you want, one day of like total rest, for
Hmm.
instance. Um, you know, Depending on your practice intensity. So like if someone's training, um, at like a medium intensity, perhaps you want to say like, okay, let's cap it at like 3 hours a day tops type thing. Versus like if it's like a really intense session, like let's look at that. Let's realize that we're going to have a super intense session. Let's drop the volume down, right?
Hmm.
Because again, like with dancers of this level, or like say if you look at also like professional athletes, like these people are there because they're hard workers.
Hmm. Yeah.
So sometimes you catch them like working too hard and they're wearing themselves down. And then you're like, hey, you know what? Like, I want you to take a rest day, like take a bath, go on a walk, crush a bunch of coconut water, whatever, get in the sun, right?
Yeah.
And then I want you to go in tomorrow and see how you feel. And they'll call and be like, holy shit, like I'm flying. And you're like, yeah, I told you would be. Like, I didn't mean to say I told you so, but like I told you.
But yeah, like I think
So,
that's something
anyways, it's just
that's something that like a lot of people forget about is like rest and time away can not even just like physical stuff, but when it comes to just mental health and things like that, sometimes
mhm,
taking a break from something is really healthy, and it just gives you time to like reset, relax, get back to like your kind of like normal self, and then you come back to it fresh, and your mind is ready or your body's ready if you're doing
mhm.
training and stuff like that. Like yeah, rest is super super useful.
Yeah, and I think like it's like maximizing like the quality when you are training.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because like 10 hours of an amazing practice is going to be better than like 15 hours of like, nah, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it just is. So like as long as you're getting what you need from like a physiology standpoint, like conditioning standpoint and all that, and then you're getting enough time in to like work on your moves, work on your sets, whatever, and like be creative, and that's
Hmm.
all happening, then
Hmm.
then you're going to be good. It's just like, and it's having someone to like look at that for you and
Hmm.
and tell you, because it's hard when you're in it, you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
as the dancer, or it's hard when you're in it and you're just like, okay, I gotta train, like that's it. But if you have someone looking at your week for you and being like, okay, like this day do this day do this, then it's like, I feel like it's a stress reliever as well, and you just know, okay, I'm going to stick to the program, trust the process,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think there's like a weird thing with breaking too, that like, because it's very sometimes like very individualistic, like
Hmm.
like I want to do this, I want to be here, this kind of thing. And like sometimes, or there's a lot of ego in there too, where it's like
Hmm.
people don't always want to learn from someone else. They're like, well, I'll just figure it, I'll learn it, I'll figure it out myself. I don't need someone telling me how to do it, which is like why sometimes workshops are like no one goes to them. you know
They're empty.
they're
Yeah.
empty, or they're only for like people who are still like beginners or something like that. Those are the people that really want to do it. I don't know.
Hmm.
But I noticed that a lot of the people that get to these really high levels, they almost always have some kind of like mentor, someone who showed them the ropes, someone who helped guide them. And like, I think if you have that mentality of, "Oh, I can do everything on my own," that kind of thing, you're not going to go very far. Like
Yeah, because
there's a
why
there's a
not?
ceiling on that.
Totally. Like, because why not draw on like all this other knowledge that's around that like people already
hmm
figured out?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. But like of course, like no one wants like you don't want to be at session like in the zone and someone comes up, oh yo, like try this.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
I agree with that. Like, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
But like definitely like going, to someone and saying like, hey, like what do you think about this? Or like,
yeah. Like people you trust or something, people that
yeah,
you've maybe naturally built with, that kind of thing. I think it's super useful. Getting real like quality feedback, someone's opinion that you value, and then they can actually help with your creativity or your things that you're lacking in a battle or whatever, or in your case like someone who's doing training, physical training, that kind of stuff. And
hmm,
you can see,
yeah,
like you said, sometimes that outside perspective is really useful.
yeah. There's a reason why. Not that this is the same, but there's a reason why, for instance, doctors aren't allowed to like self-diagnose because when it's it changes the psychology. It changes your ability to like analyze the situation a bit
hmm
because you're in it. You're the one that's in
hmm
it.
yeah,
You know.
but also, yeah, you
So
have your own inherent biases that you've built up over the
totally
years and stuff like that. Or you might overlook something because you're just so used to it that you don't even think about it. Whereas someone else would be like,
hmm,
whoa, why the hell are you doing that? Or like, what the hell is
right.
this thing that's like growing on the back of your head? Or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Not that you wouldn't
Yeah.
know. Well, it's always been there. I just never thought about it. Like,
Yeah, just like, like
it's that kind of
exactly.
thing.
Oh, that's Albert. But
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
like
exactly.
uh yeah, yeah, I find that like I do get a lot of dancers like, like often every week really like, someone will reach out and like, oh, what do you think
hmm
about this or that?
hmm
And so I think that and like, as I've gotten more and more busy with training and whatever, like I think that like my ability to like work on that kind of stuff has decreased because I don't, I might be tired or don't have the time or whatever. But I think this is going to be a cool opportunity to actually say like, okay, like I'm going to dedicate this amount of time. We're going to like work with these dancers and however else that's working, and actually like really zone it in and like and level up.
hmm
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's really
Um,
exciting.
no, all I was saying is like that idea of having like a team to work with and some more like focused, actual, structured programming
hmm
is like it's a really cool experience. I got to experience it like the year before the pandemic. I worked for Netflix and I trained the cast of like a Netflix TV show. And it's a superhero show. It's called Jupiter's Legacy. It's actually out now on Netflix.
Cool
And
little promo there.
um, whoop, whoop. And actually, it has not been renewed for season two, sadly. But it was a really cool experience because production trusted me and they just said, hey, like here's the cast, like train them, this many days a week, full time throughout filming of the whole season. So like
Wow.
it was an experience where like I had like a tight group of people. I mean that was I think shot for 9 months or something like that.
hmm
So, anyways, I think in a sense, like it's similar when you get a group of people all who are, even if they're scattered around the country, who are similar mindset and are working, and I can actually help with like dive in and kind of, program for them. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, yeah, one thing that I was thinking about before, when you were just talking about training people and like looking at the specifics of like their movement and things like that, one thing I was kind of curious about is like, when it comes to say, well, breaking specifically, there's like there's a form, but then there's kind of like, well, that's your form too. Like certain
Mm.
things are like, yeah, it's okay, it doesn't matter. And so like, are there any things that like, for example, stuff like, you're doing footwork and you're flat footed or you're flat palmed or you're I don't know, certain things like that, like, are those things that you, how do you approach that? Would you correct it, or would you just be like, okay, yeah, that's like your form, you work within it or something like that?
Yeah, I think that I think again, like that comes back to like my job in anything like in this, working with dancers or working with athletes, is literally like just to support them in a strength conditioning setting. So
Mm-hmm.
like if that's your, like if that's how your footwork looks and that's your style, that's your thing, like
Mm-hmm.
I think my job is to not mess with that, like,
Mm-hmm.
but to try to support it. For instance, if someone breaks, I don't know, if someone breaks flat handed, let's just example, and maybe because of that their wrists get more sore or
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm.
just randomly, right?
Yeah.
Then, I don't think my job is to tell them like you can't do footwork flat handed, because that's their art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if I don't think footwork should be flat handed, but you know, I might be like, yo, like personally, I think that's kind of whack, but like, hey, that's your thing. No, but my job in that case would be like, okay, let me try and work on the muscle groups in their forearms and whatnot to make their wrists stronger so that they don't get sore wrists, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that the job is to support what they're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
like if they're at that level already and they're at the top of the game in Canada and all that, like then what they're doing is working for them, like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
True. True.
So unless I was hired, like, okay, like, if you were hired, say they hired Dean as like footwork coach, I think now your job is, okay, like let's like break your footwork down, let's like
Fix your
change some things
form.
maybe. Yeah, like it looks like shit now, but but flat handed and but yeah, like as a strength conditioning coach, I don't think, yeah, my role is just literally like whatever your style is, whatever, like, and okay, if we're in the gym and we're squatting with weight on your back,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm going to make sure you have a neutral spine,
Right.
because you're
Yeah.
in the gym and you got weight on your back. But that doesn't
Yeah.
mean when you're doing footwork, I think you should have a neutral spine. I think you should make your footwork look however you want it to look,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
As long as
But
you're not
like,
like hurting yourself, right?
yeah, if they keep getting injured, it's like, okay, like could be why. Maybe try changing that,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But like if it's just a style thing and it's not hurting
Mm-hmm.
them, then like, okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
dope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, in a training setting, like I'm definitely like a stickler to like specific form, mostly for the reason that, like, in the gym, it's not a style thing. We want the effects out of that movement, the best effects we can get, and we want it to be performed in the safest manner as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in that case, okay, I have a specific way we want you to do it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, I think this is one of the cool things about the Olympics, breaking being the Olympics. Like, I don't really care for it, but I don't
Hmm.
think it's a necessarily a bad thing. Like,
Hmm.
you'll get more people thinking about these kinds of things. Maybe you'll get people even researching stuff like this more. I'm sure it's happened in
Yeah.
the past, but just there's more information, there's more clarity of like, well, what's the right way to proceed with this? Like, for a lot of time, like breaking is just kind of like, well, we just do whatever, like, and it's led it pretty far, right?
Yeah.
But I think that having a little more structure sometimes in certain areas would help it like tremendously, whether it's
Mhm.
organization with what's going on with the judging systems and federations, if that leads to like leagues or things like that. Like, that's one thing I know people have tried that before, but that's one thing that I saw talked about with like, prelims where there's like 400 people entering and stuff like that, and like 90% of them shouldn't be there, that kind of thing. But if you
Totally.
had, say, a league and people qualify, it's like, and then people get seeded into this larger event, this kind of thing, like that makes more sense. And then, but there it's complicated, and there's a lot of ins and outs, a lot of what have yous. Yeah.
For sure. And like you, yeah, like I'm sure there's, there's pros and cons, like for sure,
Hmm.
you know. Um, so I think it's going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it can be a good thing. Yeah. And like I'm excited again, like for the opportunity from a conditioning standpoint to like see what some focused work can do to help certain people level up in different ways.
Yeah, yeah, for
So
sure.
like for me, that's exciting,
Hmm.
you know. So yeah,
Yeah, cool.
should
um
be interesting.
I think that's kind of basically a lot of the stuff that I want to talk to you about. I mean, there's a ton more stuff that we could get into, but um I have one more thing. It says like backflips and cartwheels. Could you get into a little bit about that? Just kidding.
Well, no, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. You did a couple in a few shows.
I think
You did a couple
I
cartwheels.
maxed out at like two.
I
But
think there was one show where I got like 12 cartwheels.
yeah, I think there was one where it was like your solo and you did almost entirely cartwheels. We challenged you to do that. Like,
Yeah,
okay, how many can you squeeze into this one solo? I think you got like
and still
six or something
kind of
like.
make it look like you're breaking. Like,
I don't,
oh my god.
this kind of thing reminds me of like okay, for people who don't know what we're talking about, we used to do shows all over BC. Like I don't know, was that like 6 7 years ago or 8 years ago? It was a while ago
Yeah,
now.
that was 2013, I think.
Jeez, yeah, what,
Yeah,
7 or 8
dude.
years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did these shows, and they were in schools, elementary schools, high schools, and like we do sometimes like 3 shows in a day, and it's the same show over and over and over. And a lot of times, like for anyone who hasn't done that, like when you do that many shows, stuff gets super boring and routine, and you try and find stupid ways of like making it interesting again. That was one of the ways that we did it. So how much challenge?
These guys would be like, "Yo, Nick, how many cartwheels can you throw in one solo?" And I'd be like, "Oh, bro, like at least eight." And then the other thing with it was they were always like, we always would have an early show, like say like 8 a.m., 8:30, like assembly, right? Would be the
Yeah,
first one of the day.
yeah,
And like I would often meet you in the morning at like 6. And like I'm not a morning person. I'd just be
yeah,
miserable. I'm just like,
yeah,
this is the
yeah,
worst. But like it was great. It was fun gigs. Like it wasn't the worst, but like I'm
yeah.
just a
Hmm.
bad morning person.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that made it fun because we were just like there, just like okay, like stuff like
yeah,
that. But we had a lot
yeah.
of fun doing that.
But it's like it just kind of reminds me of because I started watching wrestling again in the last like couple years, and just hearing like the behind the scenes stories, things that go on, and like one of the things was um, I think it was like during the Attitude Era or whatever, when like The Rock and Stone Cold were having their feud, and it would be like The Rock would do some crap, and then Stone Cold would come out, and eventually he'd get hit. He'd hit The Rock with a stunner, and The Rock would do this like weird. He'd like get hit, fall back, roll back, and like pop up into a handstand, and like fall and like
Sick.
pop out of it and fall, and and it was so ridiculous and over the top. And then you hear the backstory, and it was like a challenge between the two of like how ridiculous could he
Uh,
make the sell on like the stunner, and like every time it got more and more ridiculous, and like yeah, it was so good. But it just
dude,
reminded me of
see,
this kind of thing.
that's essentially what we were doing
Yeah, yeah,
because it makes it fun, right? It's like let's have some fun. But
yeah.
I remember you guys always being like before the shows, being like, "Man, like you're warming up," and I'm like, I'd be like half asleep, like, yeah, gotta do it, gotta warm up.
I
So,
think we were all right with that. With I think you just maybe took it serious. And I remember like Trevor was like a popper, but he is definitely not a morning person too. And he had his like stupid warm up that he would do where he'd like slow jog around around the gym.
dude, he would.
It was
Trev would
like,
just be, I call,
yeah,
oh my God, I call Trev T Roy, by the way, for anyone who knows Trevor. Yeah, he would just be like jogging like these little like half steps, and I'm looking at him, and I hate mornings too. I'm looking at him, I'm like, man, that looks painful. Like you're just oozing like discomfort right now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Good
anyway, we
times.
had fun. We had fun doing that.
Yeah, those are good memories. Like,
Yeah.
I think you know, they were kind of cheesy shows, but and they could have paid a little better, or just the whole situation in general could have been more ideal. But it was what it was, and there were good times to be had, and
Yeah,
it's a good
for sure.
experience. Yeah.
Lots of smack talking on the drives. Nick probably taking all sorts of naps, like,
Yeah, yeah,
great.
but
And
it
then
was good times.
I would go to the gym after and train and work. That's
Yeah, that's
great.
right. Yeah, I
Those
remember
are the days.
you and Rena was our resident whacker. Yeah,
Totally.
you guys annoyed each other like dogs and cats.
Oh yeah. Well, Rena loves cats. I love dogs, and
Yeah.
so that just like started a feud. And I love Rena though. We get along great, but
Yeah.
we would go back and forth a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like you were driving, and then it was like the kids bickering.
Something like that. Yeah.
It was kind of like that. Like
Yeah.
it was like we were like little kids. Like, ah, he's on my side. Yeah, yeah. Which I probably
Yeah.
was. I
Yeah.
probably was. Let's be honest. But
But
yeah,
yeah.
man, no,
Yeah.
great times.
Yeah.
Use
Anyway,
that kind of sums up the discussion.
yeah, I think
I was
so.
going to ask you, Dean, where did you get your hat from? I just wanted to, I've been wondering about that for like an hour.
This was a an old nine release.
Oh, sweet.
So
Okay.
they did three.
That's sick.
This was when I think Nix was like living in Amsterdam. So they had the kind of three parts of nine at the time, which was like Vancouver, where it started, Amsterdam, where it was like existing at that time, and then Tokyo, which was like where he was potentially kind of moving into. And he had like a partner in Tokyo that was kind of like handling
Okay.
nine in Japan. So they had like a triple. There's a V, then A, and a T. Yeah,
I get it. Wow.
yeah. And
There we go.
I like
So that's the
green.
Vancouver.
Represents Vancouver well. It's like lots of
Yeah.
forests, trees, and stuff. Although I remember giving Nick shit for this. It was like, why did you pick like gold and purple for the letters? That's like Lakers colors.
Total. That is like Lakers
Yeah.
colors.
But at the end of
Eh.
the day, it kind of doesn't matter, and it's just like, why do you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
represent it this way? Why do you have to do it this way? It was just like, oh, it was cool
It's a
colors.
sick hat. It's a sick
Yeah,
hat.
I like it, and it's got all these gross, mild like sweat stains, which is kind of
Oh yeah, as it
like,
should.
I guess as hats tend to accumulate over the years. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's the good stuff. That's the stuff that matters.
yeah, yeah. But it's like it's so hard to find a hat that's like I don't like the box, like, not to talk shit about your hat right now,
Yeah,
but
you are
like,
talking a little shit.
yeah, but I personally am not a fan of like the boxy kind of hard front. I like the floppy like dad hat kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're a floppy hat guy.
Yeah, I'm a floppy hat guy.
That's a 5 panel, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think you call 5 panels. I look like an absolute moron in a 5 panel. I'm telling you, like, no, seriously. Like I
Or
said that in George's.
it's it's the same style as like a hard
Oh, it's not a five
one.
panel then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's just floppy. And like the
yeah.
material
It's
is like
just
this. I don't know what the hell this is. It's like quick dry kind of.
okay.
Let's see this. That doesn't help at all.
Lovely. Oh no, you actually got a good focus on that for a second. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's a great hat, you know.
yeah, yeah,
I was just, yeah, I was sitting here just thinking like, wow, what's the deal with Dean's hat? Where'd you get
yeah.
that from?
Well,
Yeah.
we're getting to the real issues here.
Well, this is the thing, you know. I'm sitting here with the good old the cock rooster hat,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was just
What is
curious.
that, by the way?
Oh,
Is that Le Coq
this
Sportif?
here, Le
No,
Coq Sportif.
no.
No, it is a coffee shop in Toronto called Rooster Cafe,
Nice, nice.
and they got a couple of locations to make a damn good cup of Joe. And I like to go there. There's a big hill actually where you can like it's a nice view of the city from the what would that be? From the east side, I think.
Hmm.
And then you can do like hill sprints in a park, great little
Sick.
hill sprint spot. There's like pull-up bars, and then there's this coffee shop.
I heard that
And so
coffee is like a decent thing to have before you work out or something like that.
yeah, yes,
A
caffeine
little bit of caffeine.
is a little bit of caffeine. Yeah, there's a point where more is not better type thing. Like
Hmm.
but caffeine is like a stimulant and can aid in even like muscular contraction, for instance. It can actually increase the force a muscle can produce. Um, so yeah, I mean, small percentages, right? Nothing
Yeah,
crazy, but
yeah, yeah.
yeah, most good pre-workouts would contain some sort of caffeine. And in fact, like with a lot of my clients, I actually urge them not even to buy like a post-workout necessarily. Like there's a lot of other stimulants and stuff in them that may or may not be good, but just like if you like coffee, have an espresso shot.
Right on.
You know?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you heard it here. The future sponsor of Freestyle Session is, I don't know, Starbucks or something like that.
I was gonna say like let's not make it Starbucks, but
Yeah. I don't know anything about coffee, so
maybe we'll get Rooster Cafe.
yeah. Who
Actually,
knows?
shout out this coffee that I'm slowly sipping on is from another one of my favorites in Toronto called Sorry Cafe.
Oh, it's very cute.
Yeah, you can see the elephant is stealing the coffee from the man, and it says sorry because I don't know who's sorry, the elephant or the man, probably the elephant.
Yeah, I guess so. You should
But
be
this
sorry for
Sorry
stealing.
Cafe,
Yeah.
these guys also make a great cup of joe. Maybe they'll sponsor us.
Yeah. Um,
Shout out.
why don't we finish it there? We're starting to go off
Okay.
into
Yeah,
we're going off into like conversation Pluto, which is cool.
yeah. You can tell this is like yeah, you can tell this is the end of like a 10-hour training day for me, and I'm like doing this hard.
Yeah.
So I apologize if you just
No,
listen to all that garbage, but
no, 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 no. I think yeah, there was a
I,
lot of cool things and a lot of interesting things, and I'm really excited to see just what goes on with your personal stuff with Breaking Canada and the Olympics and breaking, but also just Canada in general and and where that's headed and just the future of breaking. I think it's a really cool time to be alive and a lot of cool people taking the initiative to build stuff to push things. It's really cool.
if you were needing to use that as an outro, it like really froze. Just so you know.
Well, I think on my end it'll be all right. um, so, if people want to like follow you and just see what's going on and things like that, or even have some way of contacting you if they want to get training, like what are some of the ways that they can get in touch?
Yeah, probably the easiest is just like through Instagram.
Hmm.
So just Nick Robinson _ GWS for my crew.
Hmm. Cool.
And yeah, send if you really want assistance with something, send coffee,
Hmm.
and I'll probably respond.
Okay, probably. Yeah, but yeah, if people want to get serious about their training and
No,
stuff,
totally.
Nick's a good
Yeah,
resource.
yeah, totally. You can reach out. Feel free to reach out. I can always send even just resources or suggestions. Like
Yeah,
all good. So
and even
yeah,
just watching your stories and stuff is entertaining. You do some stupid stuff on there.
I just do some dumb things, and
Like, what is that? I don't know if you're still doing it, but you would flex and be like, boom, or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. We got that guy. That's a big one. Lately, we've been doing like the zoom in and like that. But like the zoom in on the
Gross.
mustache,
Gross.
it's pretty disgusting. But all sorts of shenanigans, coffee, workouts, dogs. That's
Yeah,
basically my
yeah.
feed.
Nice, nice. Well, anyway, thank you
Yeah,
so
dude.
much
Thanks for
for
having me.
yeah, thanks so much for sharing. And again, give give him a follow and hit him up for training stuff. And good luck with everything in the future with Breaking Canada and just your business in general and training. And thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Dude, thanks for having me. It's good to catch
Yeah.
up.
And for everyone listening, watching, thank you for doing that. And always appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace, everybody.
Peace.